They look at our dismissal of their martyr, our refusal to mourn, our indifference to his noise, and they interpret it as violence. To them, it is dangerous to shrug off a man they believe matters more than the rest of us. That's the center of it. They believe they hold a higher human value. It's how they square their hollow version of Christianity with their politics of cruelty. When Christ said the least of these, they never imagined he meant the immigrant at the southern border, a black family choking on poverty, or a homeless man with dirt in his hair and under his fingernails. In their reading, Jesus was speaking only of their kind. The respectable, the saved, the ones who vote like they do. Everyone else is written out of the scripture by assumption. So when we reject their prophets, when we refuse to honor their heroes, when we laugh at their idols, they feel hunted. They see extremism not because we are violent, but because their sense of human worth stops at their own skin. And once you believe that your soul alone matters, any challenge to your supremacy feels like a knife at your throat. This is how they can hold rallies calling for executions and still kneel in church pews with a clean conscience. They do not believe their cruelty is cruelty. They believe it's order. They see themselves as guardians of civilization, protectors of morality, keepers of the flame. What they cannot recognize is that the flame they keep is only lit for them, that their morality begins and ends in the mirror. To them, loving their neighbor is easy because they've erased half the damn neighborhood. And this is why they call progressives and leftists violent extremists, because we dare to remind them that the scripture they clutch is not selective, that the word neighbor has no footnotes, that Christ did not carve out exceptions for skin color, bank balance, or birthplace. They hear us speak and they feel the ground beneath them shake, not because our voices carry violence, but because their foundation has always been built on the lie that they alone are fully human. They don't call themselves supremacists because they assume everyone sees the world the same way they do. They assume superiority is a natural order and that we are simply being fussy about equality. They think we mistake their hierarchy for cruelty, when in fact, to them it is just common sense. But they never stop to ask how it feels to be on the other side of that common sense. They never consider that their sermons about law and order sound like funeral dirges to the people who've been crushed underneath them. So they rage at our refusal to bow. They rage at our dismissal of their saints. They rage at our laughter. To them it is proof of our violence, evidence of our extremism, but the truth is simpler and much sharper. We frighten them not because we threaten their lives, but because we threaten their delusion that only their lives matter. They don't want their children reading Baldwin or Hughes or Morrison or Goldman because they don't believe those lived experiences matter. They don't want their children to know what it feels like to carry the weight of a skin color, a border crossing, a factory job, or a jail sentence. They don't want their children to grow into empathy because empathy would shatter the myth that only they are fully human. To teach their children those voices would mean admitting that suffering has value, that injustice exists, that dignity is not confined to the pews of their own church or the suburbs of their own neighborhoods, and if their children knew that, the whole structure would collapse. So they ban the books. They silence the poets. They sneer at the dangerous women who write about freedom. They are terrified that their children might look at Baldwin's words and see a human being instead of an enemy. That they might read Hughes and hear the blues as a hymn of survival instead of noise from the margins. To them, that is the real danger, not violence, not hate, but the possibility that empathy might cross the picket line of their supremacy. And at the heart of it all is this brittle belief in scarcity. To them, the pie is static. There's only so much dignity, so much freedom, so much worth to go around. And if someone else is given a slice, then theirs must shrink. It is a worldview poisoned by fear, hoarding, and the false comfort of the walls they build. But to those of us with any measure of moral fiber, to those of us who believe in the radical decency of human beings, we know the table can be bigger. We know that all of the ingredients exist in abundance and that more pie can be made. And that's the difference. They live in a world of subtraction. We live in a world of creation. They cling to a narrow kingdom built on exclusion while we insist on a republic built on abundance. And it is that vision, the vision of bigger tables and endless pie, that terrifies them most. Because if their children ever tasted that, ever saw society through that lens, they would never go back. Define still death.